I grew up in a large family. There were 10 of us. And it was always fun, a lot of work, but a lot of fun. At night, we would all gather in my parents' room where the fireplace was. And of course, we would end the night before going to bed by singing and cracking jokes and listening to radio. And we were fortunate to have a radio because we were one of the few families in that community that had a radio. I already had 3 brothers in service, and when I was called, it was almost more than my father could bear. You know, my father was a very emotional person, and I don't like to recall it, but there was a hill, a few, I guess you would call it blocks now, but I guess about a mile from our home. And my father came out, he was emotional when I was leaving and started waving, and I waved back. And the last thing I remember, when I got on top of that hill, I looked back. I could barely see him still waving, and of course, I was on my way to catch the train for Camp Robinson. The Red Ball Express started out during the time, the invasion of Normandy, and they were under a lot of severe pressure, more so than more soldiers that came later. And the Red Ball Express was a kind of a special route that we took, because you didn't have many routes because you were cut off. That was just kind of a special route that was well guarded by our planes, and supplies were so greatly needed. It was a constant go, you know. You would go, you meet us coming back, you know. It was just a whirlaround, really. The Germans bombed the roads, and of course we had to make certain, you know, but we were able to keep that particular route clear of that. So all of the transportation going to the front line was through that area. Soldiers that drove the lead Jeep was from Monticello, Arkansas.
Is that right?
And of course he remained a friend of mine. As a matter of fact, when I began my teaching career, his kids attended the school in which I was principal, and he passed a few years ago.
Do you remember his name?
Yeah. His name was James William. He was a funny person. We called him Rochester because he a lot of comedy. He liked to have a lot of fun. When we had an opportunity to settle down for a few days, our home was in apple orchards. All our tents were thrown up in apple orchards all over France. And so that was our headquarters. We had rooms where we could put our cots. The first time we had been able to live under a roof since we got over there. So we had a lot of fun doing that. And of course, in this particular building, I don't know what it was used for, but when they left it, they had storage down in the basement. That's kegs and kegs and kegs of beer. So that was, so really we got a place to stay with the roof over our heads, and we had access to all the beer that we wanted.
Well, did you know at the time that it was going to be such a mark in history about the Red Ball Express?
I didn't think anything about it. It was just a job that we had to do, and we did it.
Can you share with me again the reception that you received from the people of Germany, the civilians?
They were elated. You know, they really welcomed us, and they were friendly. For the most part, they were educated, and you quickly learned that they didn't want to be they had no choice. They didn't want to be in the army. They had to, see, we also picked up soldiers that had been captured. We brought them back from the front line and dropped them off at where we were keeping the captured soldiers. When I got back home, all of my brothers were back. They were out of service. They had got out of it, and of course one was living in Chicago, and one was living in California, and of course the third one was living there in Texarkana. So later that year, we all had an opportunity to unite, you know, and so we had a good homecoming. That fall, most of us start school on the GI Bill. Mm-hmm.
And where did you go to school?
Here in Pine Bluff, my high school sweetheart, her mother, I was drafted. We would have been in college together, but I was drafted. She went and she came to college that year. So when I entered college as a freshman in 1946, she was entering her senior year. So she graduated in 1947 at the end of my freshman year, and luckily she found a job in Pine Bluff, a teacher position, and we continued to date, and we got married my junior year. It had not been credited by the North Central Association colleges, secondary schools and colleges, and that happened my senior year. So I teased my wife, even though she was 2 times smarter than me, that I graduated from an accredited institution, and she did. And she had all the sense. My first 2 years of teaching, it was in a little town about 26 miles from here, Rising. So I worked there 2 years as an English teacher and a coach. I had gotten a call from the superintendent saying he wanted to talk to me. And when I went over to talk to him, so he told me that the board has voted to make you principal. So after my second year there, I was promoted to principal. So I stayed there as principal from 54. I served as principal from 54 to 65 until I came into the Pine Bluff School District. I was hired in the Pine Bluff School District in 65. And so I stayed in the Pine Bluff District for 21 years. We had a group of kids, including college kids. They sat in the Pine Bluff, and of course my church, they got their meals at my church, St. James United Methodist Church. People over the community would bring food to our church to be served to those kids, you know. And of course I had a car, and I was not responsible, but I volunteered to help to drive them to wherever they were going to drop off. So I started drop them off whatever they were going to do, or sit in, or walk the street, or whatever. And so I was hired when I came into the Pine Bluff School District in 65. I was hired by a superintendent who was very firm. And at that particular time, it was difficult to get into the Pine Bluff School District because it was one of the leading school districts in the state. And I was brought in, and when he passed after I was here for a couple of years, but he had made plans for integration. And in his long-range plan for integrating the school, he had me listed as to go to Forest Park School, which was an all-white school, as the principal. And so the superintendent that followed him, that was a burden off his shoulders. He didn't have to worry about it, so he just picked up the plans that the former superintendent had and followed them out. And I was sent to Forest Park. And before then, he had been interviewed by somebody. I don't know where he stole the plan. They informed him, so you know, he is an integrationist. And you know, I learned later that he told him, said, I know. He said, don't you know, when I bring someone in the system, I have all the information on their background. He said, I know he was not an integrationist. I know what he had in mind. I knew for something that he was interested in, he would work hard to try to make it work. That's why he was chosen to go to Forest Park.
What would you say was the thing in your life to date that you are most proud of?
Well, I am happy that I come from a large family, and I am so happy that I was able to hold that family together. I'm the patriarch of that family. I've dozens of nieces and nephews, and they all look up to me. Even now, when something happened, they want to, you know, break about me. Let's check with Uncle Fulton and see what he has to say, you know. And I am proud that I have been able to give them some example of life that they would be following.